Pleased to be joined this morning by Scott Hoversland, who's the executive director at WCDA. They've been working, and obviously for those that have been um, to some of our events, and Scott presented, I think, back in Pinedale. I think you were in Pinedale.
Yep.
Um, and again, I gave a lot of good information at the funding summit this year in Riverton too. So you've heard a lot about what WCDA is working on with the strategic housing plan, and Scott wanted an opportunity, and we wanted to be able to get him an audience with you guys to talk a little bit more about where that effort's at. Obviously, housing is a big concern in our communities across the state of Wyoming, and honestly across states all across the country. Housing is a huge concern, but it's obviously a big block in a lot of our communities' economic development and growth and all of those things. So, with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Executive Director Hoversland from WCDA.
All right. Thanks, Justin. I appreciate that. And thank you and Sydney and Ashley for letting me have this time. Again, as Justin said, I'm the executive director, Scott Hoversland of WCDA. I've been with WCDA now for just this last June, going on 20 years. So, been here, started the first 10 years as the CFO, and then these last 10 years as executive director. So, just wanted to start off and let me share this deck here. Um, all right, can you see that? There we go. Um, and just tell you a little bit about WCDA. Start off with a little bit about WCDA and how we got to the spot where we're doing the strategic action plan. So, who is WCDA? WCDA was created 50 years ago. We're celebrating our 50th, as you can see by the new logo there on the side, in 1975 by state statute. So, been around for 50 years. We received no state funding, and we were created to help raise capital to finance affordable housing in the state of Wyoming. The one thing that we're probably most noted for is our single family mortgage purchase program. And then the other things that we administer a lot of federal funds that help with affordable rental housing throughout the state of Wyoming. We are located in Casper, and we have 45 employees. Like I said, the one thing that we're most noted for is our single family home ownership products that we have. Those are our first time home buyer product. Those are loans that can either be an FHA, an RD, or a VA loan. They're financed with the sale of tax exempt mortgage revenue bonds that WCDA actually sells on the open market to investors. And since the investors will accept a lower interest rate for those tax-free bonds, we're able to pass that savings along to our borrowers with a lower interest rate. Right now, our interest rate on our first-time homebuyer bonds is at 6.25%. Couple of another product that we have that involves bonds is a new one that we started last year is the Edge program, we call that. And that doesn't have to be for first-time home buyers, but we issue taxable bonds on that so that they're a little higher rate. But if you're not a first-time home buyer, that rate is usually very competitive with the local interest rates. So right now, we don't have any bond proceeds that are available for that, so we are using one of our secondary market products there that we call the Advantage program. That Advantage program is we purchase more when we purchase the mortgages, they're sold to Ginnie Mae, and Ginnie Mae actually does a mortgage-backed security and so sells those off. So they're getting a product in the end that goes to investors, but we're getting a better interest rate to help out non-first time home buyers. One of the other secondary market products that we have is the HFA Preferred program. That is a program that is offered by Fannie Mae and offers semi-competitive rates with a lot of other mortgage products out there. But right now, it's not really competitive when a lot of the rates uh, around Wyoming are in the higher sixes. It's at 7.25%. I think the one advantage that WCDA is able to offer is that we're able to offer down payment assistance on all of our mortgages that we originate here. So if you have a first-time home buyer mortgage, you can get down payment assistance up to $15,000 to help with closing cost and down payment. Um, and that under the first-time home buyer product would be at 0%. And we offer that at 0%, but then it's due upon refinancing or sale of the house. And you don't have a regular monthly payment. If you go with one of the secondary market products, the Advantage program or the HFA preferred, you can get that 15,000, but then it's amortized over 10 years and at a rate of 6.25%. So those are some of the products that we're able to provide that really help first-time home buyers and other buyers that don't qualify for the first-time home buyer program. So kind of with those secondary market products able to help out people that maybe can't get financing from the bank. They can go through and get a WCDA loan that way. And then on the multifamily side, we, like I said, receive funding from the federal government from a few sources to help with affordable rentals in the state. The low income housing tax credit is probably one of the deepest subsidies that we have to help with that. And that's money. It's actually a tax credit offered to investors from the IRS for over a period of 10 years. So we get approximately 3.5 million of tax credits a year allocated to us. And then those are allocated out to investors that apply to or developers that apply to WCDA. And then they can sell those directly through a syndicator to an investor that can take that tax credit against their taxes over a period of 10 years. And that is actually all equity into a project. So that is, like I said, probably our deepest subsidy because most of the others are loans that have to be amortized over a period of 10 to 20 years, and they're actually making payments. With that tax credit, they're able to sell those tax credits and then get cash for those tax credits and then put that equity directly into a project. The other programs are the Home Investment Partnership Act. That's money administered by Housing and Urban Development, and we get approximately 3.5 million of funding from the Home Investment Partnership Act a year, and that's for more of the 60% area medium income and below. And then we get money from the National Housing Trust Fund, which is from the profits of Fannie Mae and Ginnie Mae, the GSEs that the U.S. government took into conservatorship back in the housing crisis of 2008. And those profits are actually given out to housing finance agencies such as WCDA to invest in affordable housing. And we get about approximately 3.1 million from that source every year. Another one of the sources that we have for community and neighborhood development is the Community Development Block Grant. We took that over during COVID from the Wyoming Business Council. And that's HUD money that's allocated, generally used for infrastructure type projects, roads, sewers, sidewalks, water systems, and that. And we get approximately 3.5 million from the CDBG grant a year. And then one of the last things we got through during COVID was related to our home investment partnership money was the home ARP funds. And that is supposed to be directed towards homelessness. So we just have that program just starting up and running right now. We got that approved, all the program plan approved through our board at our June meeting. So we have approximately $7.2 million to help with homelessness throughout the state. That's not a yearly allocation. That was an allocation through the American Recovery Plan. So let's see. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of with WCDA is all of those mortgages that we originate or purchase for our first-time home buyers and those non-first-time home buyers, we actually service right here at WCDA for those residents within the state of Wyoming. That gives everybody a place to call, a place to come if they need help with their loan. We have our collection department and servicing department actually works on those loans every day and makes calls when people are late in their payment and if they have to do a workout with their mortgage, then we're here and available to sit down with them and work through those difficult situations sometime. And this slide kind of shows that as of the end of May, I don't have the June numbers yet, but we serviced approximately 1.8 billion in loans. Those loans that are WCDA loans that we actually have on our books at 1.1 billion, and then we service another half a million for Fannie Mae and 160 million for Ginnie Mae for those products that they offer through us. So. And I guess that's what, in brief, is what does WCDA do and what have we done? But as we came into started coming out of COVID and even before that, um, housing is a big problem in the state of Wyoming. Mainly the lack of not just affordable housing, but housing supply across the spectrum has been becoming more of a situation now that hinders economic development and growth in our communities. So uh, I'll move to the next slide. We commissioned, as we started seeing some of this coming about, um, we commissioned a study with Root Policy Research out of Colorado to come and look at the housing needs in the state of Wyoming so that we could quantify what those numbers were and maybe, then further look at how we could meet those needs across the spectrum, not just in affordable housing, but all the way up to workforce housing and beyond. So we contracted with Root Policy in, I think it was October, November of 2023 to do the statewide housing needs assessment. And this is some of the information that showed. I think I've presented that to Wham before, but I've got a couple of slides just to kind of show some of those things. In this slide, we show that home values have continued to increase over the years and are projected to keep increasing. Um, the Wyoming medium income of a medium household has kind of remained steady and is increasing slightly, but that green middle line that drops way off is the affordability of home prices. And what caused that? Well, prior to COVID and during COVID, we had interest rates that were in the 2 and 3% range. And after that came to an end and COVID came to an end, interest rates went up as high as 6, 7, 8%. So we're seeing in the 6 and 7% right now. So that affordability factor went off the cliff right there, starting after 2021 and in 2022. Another thing that the housing needs assessment pointed out was that affordability level, if you look at the 23 counties across the state of Wyoming, in 2021, there were several of them where that blue line extended beyond the rest, and the affordable price housing was affordable in a lot of those counties. But if you go to the right side in 2023, every single county, the typical home value far exceeds that of what a medium household can afford. So that's where we're running into a lot of problems with affordability in the state for home prices. The statewide housing needs assessment that came out in 2024 really had a lot of key points, but I think a few of those are Wyoming actually needs between 21,000 and about 39,000 housing units between 2021 and 2030 to meet the projected demand within the state. And that's really what we're kind of looking at now is how do we get that housing supply up to where we need to be? Um, Another thing was that over 50,000 households that were at that earned under 100% of the area median income had severe problems with cost burden, which is they spend more than 30% of their gross income on housing costs, which um, includes insurance and taxes and those types of things. There was overcrowding in a lot of housing, which overcrowding by HUD is defined as more than one person per room. So severe overcrowding is 1.5 to 2 people per room. A lot of us grew up with that, and I mean we had bunk beds and rooms, but the definitions of HUD are a little bit different than that now. Or they lack adequate kitchen facilities or adequate plumbing needs. So another thing is that the median rent rose by 32% between 2010 and 2021, and incomes only increased by 18%. And 41% of those single parent households were cost burdened. And as I noted before, in every county, the median home value exceeded the median income. And we also noted that by 2030, 1 in 4 residents in Wyoming will be at the age of 65 or older. So we've got a aging population, and the housing needs of the aging population may be a lot different than our younger generations. And that's one of the things that I think we're facing now is we're not retaining those younger folks at home and in Wyoming, and that's resulting in this type of demographic. 32% of homes were also built before 1970, and 66% of all homes were built before 1990. So we've got an aging, not just population, but our housing stock of homes is also aging and needs probably, some type of rehab and repair types of programs out there. So that's why, as I said, the findings underscore the need for affordable rental and ownership options and options to rehab aging housing stock, and then to look at some zoning and land reforms, and also target some of the vulnerable populations. So with this information that we gathered, in 2024, then we looked at that. Plus, we also looked at back in 2015 under Governor Meade, the Tour 23 happened, and that was where they went around to all 23 counties and kind of looked at what the counties needed. And the number one or number two thing in every county was housing. So that it's been going on for now over 10 years since we first identified that. So that is when we decided we needed to commission a statewide strategic housing action plan to determine how we're going to address these problems that have been persisting in the state of Wyoming. We then worked with and put out a request for a proposal and we got about 3 or 4 different responses to that, but the one that came in at the top of that list was ABT Global, and we contracted with them in June of 2024 then to do our statewide strategic housing action plan. They completed that work and they issued their report, and that report was presented on January 9th at the beginning of this year. I'll kind of go through some of the information from that report, and that's what this webinar is about. When we did the report, there was some basic principles that we wanted to cover in the report. And as you all know, being the cities out there, we really value our local decision making, and not that we can always have all the funding and that's needed to correct the problems, but actually the local decision making is very important. And that was one of the first things that we talked with ABT Global about is, we have to have things that we can do at a local level, whether it be city or county, and at a state level, and things that WCDA will also have to work on at a federal level to get funding to help with this problem. We also know that housing contributes to a resilient economy out in all areas of our state. And the state does play a role in it. I mean, that's one of the things that we're having a difficult time now with is funding from the state or, allowing for local control to make those decisions. But the state does play a role in what we can do. And we wanted to make sure that the plan wasn't just for cities like Casper and Cheyenne and that worked for them, but it didn't work for our smaller communities. We have so many smaller communities out there, and most of our communities are the small communities in our state. So we couldn't just have it for a few communities. We needed it to work for all. Plus, we wanted the plan to have some of those things that were realistic goals, but also some that were a little bit more ambitious that we could work towards, not say in 1 or 3 years, but maybe a 5 year and beyond type of plan. So I think when we got this plan, the statewide strategic plan back, it addressed all of those types of items. And these are the goals of the plan: to increase housing affordability, support families' well-being, ensure year-round Wyoming residents can actually make ends meet and afford to live here, ensure adequate housing supply. I think housing supply is our big problem to support Wyoming's economic growth and retain our workforce, and then balance the need for Wyoming's workforce while preserving the state's open space and natural beauty and make efficient, oops, misspelled there, use of limited resources of infrastructure. Uh, the next thing that I'll just talk about and I'll hit on, and then I think what I'll do is after I just talk about this, I'll go into the plan and we'll go into some of these tools that are out there and I'll just give some examples and then kind of open the floor if there's any questions or if anybody out there, after that wants, I'll have my information up there. Me to come and present locally to say your city council or, within, your city or some civic organization or that, let me know. And somebody from WCDA can come out and do kind of a deeper dive with your local communities. But we've got this tool now, and I want to make sure that it gets out there and gets used. So I'll go through. We have three main things that came from this. We have the Strategic Housing Action Plan document, which is actually 111 pages. I think about 15 or 20 of those are appendices with where the information came from. But it's a good sized document, but also consumable. I mean, if you have a little while to go through it. But then we have a statewide strategic housing action plan story map. The story map is actually highlights of the plan in a more digestible form, I think. And that's probably what I'll show you. I won't go through the 111 pages. We'll go through the story map and how that works. And then the thing that I think most of the people on this call will be interested in is the local housing policy lookup tool. So there's a lot of information that you can look up by all the municipalities within the state. It's kind of a click and learn type of tool that's out there. So all of these tools, as I note here, can be found on our WCDA website on the front page. If you scroll down to about midway through that, it'll have the Strategic Housing Action Plan on there, and it'll have all these tools available. So I'll actually click on this and hopefully here is the front page of our website. And like I said, if you scroll down here, it talks about here's the final presentation. So this is the webinar that ABT did for WCDA and Wyoming and did that presentation. So it's recorded and on our webpage there. Down at the bottom is the completed strategic housing action plan. You can click on that and actually download that whole plan. But the the story map is right here, and I'll click on the story map to bring that up. Like I said, it's really an interactive tool and summarizes the entire 111 pages in a pretty digestible type of thing. So it goes through here, the overview and background, some of what I talked about there, then and how to navigate the story map. It'll talk about the contents, sources, all the sources of the information, and then also why we decided to do the plan. The plan's vision, as I talked about. But then it goes through each of these areas at the top of it, the overview, the housing costs. It'll go through and give you information on housing costs. It'll go through the information that was gathered during the statewide housing needs assessment. So it has that information incorporated into here. Talks about the housing supply challenges, the goals, the strategies, and then last is that local policy. So we can go there. But um, housing supply challenges, it kind of goes through each of those, and I won't spend a lot of time on those, but it's very in depth and detailed. So if you want to look through those, you can actually go out here to the story map and do that. And then we had all of our strategies are kind of right around four different goals that we had. Ability to support family well-being and year-round residents that I had already talked about these four goals. So all of these strategies that are in part six are around those four things. So there's 27 different strategies under these four goals. So they are all listed out here. Um, there is probably three of the items that were on these list of strategies that actually had bills before the legislature this year. And you may be aware of what those ones are. They were the tax increment financing bill that made it to committee but didn't ever come out of committee, unfortunately. The protest petition, which got passed by both the House and the Senate in different forms, and then went to conference committee, and we had no luck getting it out of conference committee or no compromise on that to get any changes to the protest petition. And then the last was the first strategy up there is create a flexible housing development fund to support local housing needs. And that was a bill that was actually drafted by Representative Trey Sherwood out of Laramie and never made it to the floor. So we did not see that. Hopefully what we'll be able to do in well, this upcoming year and future years is to get more traction with those types of things. We have the housing is before the corporations committee. As one of their interim topics. They weren't going to take it up, but have decided that they will allow us time, hopefully the next meeting in August that's here in Casper, to have an hour or two to talk about the statewide housing strategic action plan and give some examples of these 27 strategies of things that how the state can help out in those things. So I think we are getting some traction on those, and hopefully we'll see some more on that. Both WAM and WCDA, we have Matt Hall working for us as lobbyist and advocate. So WCDA has also hired Matt to help with this strategic housing action plan. So I think that's a good partnership that we formed right now. And Matt will be advocating on both of our behalves for these types of things. Um, Rather than me go through these 27 strategies, I think that the main thing is looking at the local policy tool. So I will head to that. Let me get back to that. So if you look again on our main webpage, this middle item is a local housing policy lookup tool. Takes a while to populate here, but it shows the whole state, the whole map of the whole state in there. So you can click on the area where you're located. I will actually use Upton because Mark Lindstrom is a member of our WCDA board. So if you have anything that you want Mark Mark to know about or things that you would like WCDA to be looking at, you can get a hold of Mark. He might not be happy that I said that, but that's all right. Mark is a great board member. So if we click on this area of Upton, then it comes up with some of the different demographic information that was taken from the needs assessment and has a lot of that information in there. It'll go through the different things for Weston County housing information. It has some different snapshots that you can click on and go to. Um, it has a WCDA housing snapshot, and that is the information that was taken directly from our statewide housing needs assessment. And then at the bottom here, it has local housing solutions need assessments report. So local housing solutions is ABT Global, our contractor on this, worked with New York University and has a huge database of information that they've worked together on for cities and counties across the country on different solutions. So this is just a kind of a short report that you can click on and it will give you information for your local area, which is very handy. It gives you kind of a local needs assessment for your area. Yeah, you'll need to look at that yourself and make sure you go through it and agree with the items that are in there. I think some of it they try to keep it up at all times and they work with them a lot. But at the very bottom then is you can look at some different housing policies that are potential housing policies for your city or town, and you can click on that. Oh, that's not right. Let's go back. Okay. It was showing Yellowstone down here at the area, and it said it has no housing. It can't have housing, so that's why it wasn't populating correctly. So now you can see up here it says suggested housing policies for Upton. There's several different areas here on the left-hand side talking about ADUs, um, different housing policies that work with U.S. rural development, zoning changes, parking requirements, employee-assisted housing, HUD block grant funding, the tax credit program that WCDA administers, and then public land for housing. It'll has information on each of these, so you can go through and see that on when you click on it on this right side, it brings all of that information up. Um, so I think this local housing policy tool will be a great resource for for most of the cities out there. Um, they'll have easy access to it. Like I said, it's just right on our front of our web page. So you can go out there, look through that, um, review that type of stuff. And if you have other questions, just give me a call. Let us know. We're here to help. We've helped develop this, so we want to make sure it gets used. And then if it doesn't meet your needs, let us know what's needed. We can continue to look at those types of things and see what else we can do to help out there. That I spent about 35 minutes on that. So I'll just kind of open it up, I guess. And if you have any questions, let me know. I've got my contact information up here. If you would like us, like I said, to come out and just sit down with you or your staff or city council, we'd be happy to schedule something and be able to get around the state and do that for you.
If you guys have got questions, feel free. You can put them either in the chat or if you want to raise your hand, I can admit you through so that you can ask it just through the regular audio as well. Scott, obviously something that we've that we've talked about, and it's been an ongoing conversation, is, and there are different ideas as to whether or not, and I think it falls on the economic development piece too, as to, what's the state's role um, in possibly trying to move the ball on any of these problems and roadblocks that we have for growth, whether it's in housing inventory or again in the economic development sphere. I think it's in there's a lot of chickens and eggs. Um, I've participated in some of the Business Alliance listening sessions around the state, and I think it's an extremely hard nut to crack, and I think that's why there's been so many talented minds that have been working on it for a while now, and there's no panacea. There's no singular nail to hit on the head to take care of this. But again, going back kind of to the state's role, and then given the current political climate in the legislature, looking at some of those things like Representative Sherwood's bill, obviously the zoning protest bill, some of these things. What do you think the prospects are for working on some of this legislation, and how can our membership be helpful in trying to advocate for some of that, or at least let their local legislators know that this is an important effort?
Well, thanks, Justin. And I think that's just a thing that we're going to have to be, before them all the time. I mean, I've seen that more since COVID. I was asked to be down, come down with the governor and just talk on different things about housing and how people, it was one of the main things. Everybody, stayed home, so they if they didn't have a home, they were in more danger of things. But um, as the wheels start turning, we want to just make sure we stay before. And I said that's one of the nice things we've been working with WHAM, through Matt now, having an advocate with the legislature, somebody that's there all the time. I know I worked with Bob a lot before when Bob was there, and always sat with him through a lot of those meetings and different things that we tried to do. I think it's going to be one of those things that we just need to get out, and even every one of us can talk to our local legislators and talk about the things that we can see. And now we've got, like I said, the needs assessment and the action plan to kind of give us one of those tools to talk about, what are the needs in our area, so we can pull some of that. The needs assessment has little one pagers for all the 99 municipalities in the state. So there's information about what's going on, or the lack of housing in the areas. If it's overcrowding or cost burden, it has that information on there. And then I think we also are working with, it's not just WCDA and WHAM. I've met with WEDA, Dr. Brett there all the time. The other one is Rennie at the Business Alliance. Been working a lot with him. Work with Josh and his crew at the Business Council. So we also, from doing that, have also restarted. It was the WIONARO is what it was. It was the Wyoming Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officers. It kind of was those a group of constituents interested in housing throughout the state that used to meet through, I think, late 2019 or 2020. It was, I think, COVID kind of, it fizzled out over that time. And Melissa Noah and Melissa is with the Wyoming Housing Network, have kind of wanted to get that restarted because it can do a lot of housing um, constituency work, and also housing training for some of the public housing finance agencies around the state. So I think it's those are some of the things that we can do, or get involved in those types of things and really talk to our local legislators about the needs. And I think now hopefully we all have some of those tools we need. If we knew that, felt like we didn't have enough housing in our area, now we can go look that up on the needs assessment information that we have on our website, and also look at the plan and say, hey, we're not only complaining about this. We're not going to say that, hey, we don't have enough housing, it's up to you. We've got some ideas that we can work with. And if you can help us, we've got these different things that we can do.
The obviously uh, there was a lot of upheaval very recently as the big beautiful bill was in the Senate. um, the public lands discussion and the proposed sale of public lands obviously mobilized a lot of folks, not only nationwide, but obviously struck a chord for folks here in Wyoming. The stated goal, and obviously that proposition fell by the wayside now before that bill moved back to the House, but the stated goal of that, at least from the sponsoring legislator out of Utah, was that to open those lands up in the potential of those lands opening up for affordable housing development. Obviously, I think the amendment language was probably a little too broad and kind of opened things up to where, it wasn't as surgical as it could have been. But, we had an interim committee bill last year that talked about some state trust land that was tucked in, close to our municipal boundaries or even sort of encircled in some cases by our municipal boundaries. Um, is that something that and obviously President Trump signed an executive order to talk about the idea of public lands being made available in cases where it would be efficient to, with utilities and infrastructure and whatnot, where they border municipal boundaries to be used for housing development to work on the housing crisis. So, do you think that's a viable thing moving forward? And how does that play into all of this? Because obviously the land and the lots are a big part of the expense of doing any sort of development.
Well, and that I think plays in too, and that's what I was just kind of looking down here. If we look on the statewide strategic plan under category 3 of reducing regulatory and land access barriers to housing development, strategy 3.5 is exploring opportunities for housing development on state and federal lands. So that is one of the things that's kind of encompassed in the plan and looking at those types of things. And I know that this is one of the earlier times that has come up nationally on especially on federal lands. And there's a ton of, recreation and hunting and all the advocates out there that look at it through different lenses. And that's what we got to be very careful about is we're not looking at taking all that public land out there that is ready for hunting and those types of things. It's like you said, those in and around cities that could be used for housing. Is there something that we could do with a portion of that? Is it viable? Actually, our CFO now, Michael Holliday, it came to us from he was at the Housing Finance Agency in Nevada, and actually Nevada has been one of the recipients of some of those exchanges of federal land, and they try to do that for affordable housing in some places, and they have actually made it work in certain instances. So I think it's doable, but I think we also have to be respectful that there's some people out there that think we're going to try to scoop up all federal lands, and it's not that. It's those that we can make work for things in or around our municipalities that would work. So.
Sure. One last question I had. The Obviously you guys administer that community development block grant and some of your other funding streams for, the different loans that you administer and that those programs and down payment assistance and a lot of that obviously is federal dollars. And I know there's been specific discussion about the community development block grant. Where does all that kind of stand in this, in the Doge era, so to speak? With those fundings, do you see funding that's in peril that we could be, kind of talking to our legislators or our congressional delegation about, to try to make sure? I think they've done a good job of reaching out to us and saying, hey, what's important? What do we need to kind of build fences around? And to say what's important in the state of Wyoming, but are there parts of you guys' program that have been effective that the fundings may be in peril and where we could be helpful in kind of stating the importance of that funding to our communities?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think that is one of the things, as you talked about, with the discussion on the big beautiful bill. I mean, we actually got some wins in there for the low income housing tax credit. There was under the Trump's first administration in 2017, they gave us an increase of 12.5% um, on the low income housing tax credits, the amount of housing tax credits we could get in a year. But that was that was a sunset version that went away in 2022. So that went for the when it was passed in 2017, it went for 5 years and went away in 2022. Well, under the big beautiful bill, we got an increase of slightly less. It was 12%, but it was made permanent. So that's the nice thing about that. We got that increase. And then some of the um, amounts, if there's a 9% tax credit and a 4% tax credit. And with a 4% tax credit, it's not a competitive process. Developers can come in and be allocated, 4% tax credits, but they then have to fund a certain percentage of the development cost using tax exempt bonds. So that, I mean, they'll pay interest on those bonds, but they used to have to pay up to 50%. Now, well, that threshold has went down to 25%, so they can reduce, the amount of tax exempt bonds that they can use in the project. So some of those are big wins for what's happening out there in those bills. And the home and CDBG for almost, well, yeah, under Republican administrations, a lot of times I've seen those fluctuate and go down from time to time. And under Trump, they've always been zeroed out. But those are some major programs that really help finance especially the housing in all the states. And people have really rallied around those. So home is an important funding source for us because, like I said, we get 3.5 million of it a year from the federal government. So it does help in financing those rental properties. And then the CDBG, like I said, we've had that for 4 years now, and often, that is at the risk of being cut. But there's a lot of things that get funded through that in the state. Like I said, critical infrastructure needs and those types of things. So, if you are talking to your legislator, remind them that the home and CDBG are important parts of how we fund housing in the state.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Scott, for that. I didn't see any questions come through or any hands go up. So, um, again, thank you for popping on today, just ahead of the holiday, and we hope that everybody enjoys the holiday, has a safe one out there. We will go ahead and post this recording. We'll get the editing done on that, and we'll get it uploaded, and we'll get that out to everybody that registered, and we'll blast it out to membership too. Obviously, a lot of folks probably starting holiday early and those sorts of things. So, but we'll get that distributed to everyone. Thank you again, Scott, and I'll let you have any closing remarks you might have.
All right. Well, yeah, I just want to, take the time and thank everybody for being on here and also wish them a happy 4th and safe travels. And like I said, if you have any questions or would like us to, do a presentation locally for you, get a hold of me and you can find um, my email and phone number is here on the screen still. So if you need that, write it down and get a hold of me and we'd be happy to come out and talk to you.
Sounds good, Scott. I appreciate that. And we'll have all of Scott's information as well when I send out that email to make sure it's easily accessible. But thank you again. Thanks everybody again, and we hope you have a safe and happy 4th and have a good afternoon.
See you, everybody.